My parents mocked me my entire life, so I didn't invite them to my wedding, but my brother begged me to give them a chance, and they tried to ruin everything. I, 28M, have always had a complicated and painful relationship with my parents. Growing up in a supposedly perfect family in suburban Boston was anything but perfect for me. My father, 58M, is a successful orthopedic surgeon, and my mother, 56F, manages his practice. They had their lives all planned out, including how their children should turn out. My older brother, Sean, 32M, fulfilled all their dreams. He was a star quarterback in high school, got straight A's, went to an Ivy League school, and now works as an investment banker. Then there was me, the disappointment. I struggled with reading from an early age. While other kids in my class were reading chapter books, I could barely get through a paragraph without the letters jumping around on the page. My teachers kept telling my parents something wasn't right, but they refused to listen. Instead, they made me sit at our dining room table for hours after school, trying to force me to read. My father would stand over me, getting increasingly frustrated as I stumbled over words, often ending these sessions by throwing the book across the room and calling me worthless. My mother wasn't any better. She would constantly tell relatives and family friends how slow I was, always following it up with, "But at least we have Sean." At family gatherings, she would parade Sean around, showing off his latest achievements, while I was told to stay in my room because they were embarrassed by my inability to carry a proper conversation. What they didn't realize was that I was actually quite good at math and could solve complex problems in my head. I just couldn't read the questions on paper. Sean, despite being their golden child, wasn't actually cruel to me. When he was home from school, he would sometimes sneak into my room and help me with my homework, reading the questions aloud, so I could solve them. But he left for college when I was 12, and that's when things got really bad for me. The turning point came during my sophomore year of high school. My English teacher, Mrs. Thompson, noticed that despite my reading difficulties, I was excellent at verbal discussions and could analyze complex themes when they were presented orally. She suggested I might have dyslexia and helped me get tested. When the diagnosis came back positive, I thought finally my parents would understand that I wasn't lazy or stupid. I had a legitimate learning disability. Instead, they were furious. They accused Mrs. Thompson of making excuses for my laziness and threatened to get her fired. My father said no son of his could have a mental problem and refused to implement any of the recommended accommodations. That same year, I failed my driving test twice because I couldn't read the signs fast enough. My father completely lost it. He gathered the entire extended family for a dinner and announced that I was an embarrassment to the family name. He said I would never amount to anything and would probably end up being a burden on Sean for the rest of my life. But Mrs. Thompson didn't give up on me. Behind my parents' backs, she and my high school counselor helped me apply for accommodations for my SATs. With extra time and a reader, I scored in the 95th percentile in math. They also helped me apply to colleges and for disability accommodations. I got accepted to several good schools and chose one across the country in California, as far from my parents as possible. My parents only agreed to pay for college because Sean convinced them it would be embarrassing to tell their friends that their son didn't go to college. They made it clear they expected me to fail out within a semester. But with proper accommodations and text-to-speech technology, I thrived. I made the dean's list every semester and majored in computer science. Most importantly, during my junior year, I met Emily, 27F, in a programming lab. She was a teaching assistant, and when she noticed me using text-to-speech software, she shared that her younger brother also had dyslexia. Instead of seeing it as a weakness, she showed me how to use it as a strength. She introduced me to coding practices specifically designed for dyslexic programmers and helped me build my confidence back up. After graduation, I got a great job at a tech company in San Francisco. I only saw my parents during major holidays, and even then, they couldn't help themselves. At Thanksgiving 2 years ago, my mother cornered Emily in the kitchen and asked her if she was sure she wanted to be with someone like me when she could probably find someone more capable. She said Emily needed to understand that any children we had might inherit my problem, and she should think carefully about that. When Emily and I got engaged 6 months ago, we decided we didn't want my parents at our wedding. We sent invitations to Sean and other family members, but deliberately left them out. I didn't want to spend my wedding day being belittled or having them make snide comments to Emily's family about their daughter marrying the slow brother. Last week, Sean called me. He said our parents were devastated about not being invited. He reminded me that despite everything, they had still paid for my college education and given me opportunities in life. He said they had been doing a lot of self-reflection and realized they had made mistakes. According to him, our mother had been crying every night, and our father had actually shown remorse for how he treated me. Sean said they had even started researching dyslexia to understand me better. After a long discussion with Emily, I reluctantly agreed to give them one last chance. Sean promised he would keep them in check, and Emily said that if they had really changed, we should at least give them the opportunity to prove it. So I sent them an invitation with a note saying I was willing to try and move forward if they could respect my boundaries and treat both me and Emily with respect. They responded with a long email about how grateful they were and how they wanted to make amends. But within days, the old pattern started emerging. My mother began calling Emily multiple times a day, trying to take over our wedding planning. She criticized everything from our venue choice to Emily's dress, which she hadn't even seen. She said our outdoor venue wasn't prestigious enough for Surgeon's son's wedding, even though I had specifically chosen it because it was meaningful to Emily and me. It was where we had our first date. When Emily politely stood her ground about our choices, my mother called me, ranting about how my fiancé was being difficult and disrespectful. She said Emily clearly didn't understand our family standards and suggested we postpone the wedding until Emily learned her place. Yesterday, things reached a breaking point. My parents showed up unannounced at our apartment, saying they had flown in early to help with the wedding. They had brought their own wedding planner and started going through all our carefully made plans, declaring everything needed to be changed because it wasn't good enough for the family's reputation. When I tried to stand up to them, my father fell right back into his old patterns, calling me ungrateful and disrespectful. Emily and I asked them to leave, but they refused to go. They said they had already told all their friends they were staying with us, and it would be embarrassing for them to get a hotel now. When we insisted, my father got angry and threatened us. He said if we made them leave, they would tell everyone what a disappointment I've always been and how I'm trying to cut them out of my life for no reason. He even brought up my dyslexia again, saying they had sacrificed so much to raise a child with problems. I'm at my breaking point. The wedding is in 3 weeks, and I'm seriously considering uninviting them again. Sean says I'm being too harsh and should give them another chance since they're trying in their own way, but Emily thinks we should stick to our original plan of not having them there. I don't know what to do anymore. Part of me feels guilty because they did pay for my college, but another part of me knows they only did it to save face with their friends. Am I wrong for wanting to uninvite them again? Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Reading your responses really helped me understand that I wasn't being unreasonable, and sometimes paying for things doesn't give people the right to control your life forever. After that day, when my parents showed up at our apartment, Emily and I spent several days discussing our options. We even made a pros and cons list about having them at the wedding, but the cons list just kept getting longer. The final straw came when my mother sent Emily a link to a completely different wedding dress, saying she had already ordered it in Emily's size and it would arrive next week. She didn't even ask for Emily's measurements. She just assumed. When Emily politely declined, my mother sent a barrage of texts about how Emily was ungrateful and probably just wanted to look cheap at her wedding. I finally gathered my courage and wrote them a long email. I explained how their behavior was exactly why we hadn't wanted to invite them in the first place. I told them about all the times they had hurt me growing up and how their current actions showed they hadn't changed at all. I ended the email by telling them they were no longer welcome at our wedding and asking them not to contact us again. I also sent a separate email to Sean, telling him that while I appreciated him trying to help, he needed to stop pushing me to maintain a relationship with our parents. I reminded him of all the times he had witnessed their cruelty when we were younger and how he had helped me behind their backs because he knew they were wronged. What happened next was absolute chaos. Within hours of sending those emails, my parents started calling everyone in our family. They told people I was having some sort of mental breakdown and that Emily was manipulating me against my family. My mother actually called my aunt, crying, saying she was worried I might be in some sort of cult because the son she raised would never treat his parents this way. They didn't stop there. They somehow got hold of Emily's parents' phone numbers and started calling them multiple times a day. They told Emily's mom that she should be concerned about her daughter marrying into our family because I clearly had deep-seated psychological issues. They even suggested that my dyslexia might be affecting my mental stability and decision-making abilities. Emily's parents, thankfully, saw right through this and blocked their numbers. But the worst betrayal came from Sean. A few days after sending the emails, we started getting messages from distant relatives saying they were looking forward to seeing us at the original venue on the original date. I was confused because we hadn't shared the venue details with extended family yet. After some investigating, I discovered that Sean had given our parents access to our wedding website, which included all the venue details, timeline, and even the hotel block information for guests. When I confronted Sean about this, he tried to play it off as an accident. He said he had just logged into the website on our parents' computer during a visit and must have forgotten to log out, but something about his explanation didn't add up. That's when I got an unexpected call from Sean's wife, Kate. She was clearly upset and said she couldn't keep quiet anymore. She revealed that Sean's supposedly successful investment banking career wasn't what it seemed. His company had been struggling for the past 2 years, and he had made some bad investments that put them in serious debt. Our parents had been secretly paying his mortgage and his kids' private school tuition. According to Kate, when Sean had first approached our parents about my wedding invitation, they had given him an ultimatum. Either he convinced me to invite them and make peace with them, or they would stop supporting him financially. That's why he had been pushing so hard for reconciliation, not because he believed they had changed, but because he was desperate to keep their financial support. Kate also revealed that our parents were now planning to come to the wedding anyway, whether we wanted them there or not. They had been telling people that they needed to save me from Emily's influence and were encouraging other family members to help them stage an intervention at the wedding. Emily and I spent the next few days frantically reworking all our wedding plans. We had to change the venue, which meant losing our deposit. We changed the date, which meant some of our friends couldn't make it anymore. We had to create a new wedding website and only shared the login details with people we absolutely trusted. We also had to call all our vendors and update them on the situation, asking them not to share any information if someone claiming to be my parents called. The most painful part was going through our guest list and uninviting several family members who we suspected might help my parents crash the wedding. These were people I'd grown up with, cousins I used to play with, aunts and uncles who had given me birthday presents every year, but we couldn't take the risk. All these changes are costing us quite a bit more money than we had budgeted, but Emily says it's worth it for our peace of mind. Her parents have been incredibly supportive and even offered to help cover some of the extra costs, although we declined. Sean has been blowing up my phone with apologies since Kate told me the truth, but I'm not ready to forgive him yet. His betrayal hurts almost as much as my parents' behavior. He knew exactly what growing up with them was like. He had seen firsthand how they treated me, and yet he chose money over supporting his brother. The new wedding is in 5 days, and for the first time since this whole drama started, I'm actually feeling excited about it. We've hired security for the venue and given them photos of my parents and Sean. It's sad that it had to come to this, but I'm determined not to let them ruin what should be the happiest day of our lives. On the day of the wedding, we had everything exactly the way we wanted. It was small, intimate, and full of love. Our families, the ones who truly supported us, were there to celebrate. My parents never showed up, and that was the best decision we could have made. I no longer felt guilty or conflicted. I had made my choice, and for the first time in years, I was at peace.